If you visit Egypt today, you'll find the landscape dominated by massive stone monuments like these. Ramses II built them to project untouchable authority. To the ancient Egyptians walking past these colossal statues, the message was clear. Their pharaoh was a living god, and his military victories were absolute. This wall relief illustrates the official state narrative, a text known as the Poem of Pentor. According to this account, during a major campaign against the rival Hittite Empire, Ramses found his army routed. But instead of retreating, the pharaoh supposedly called upon his divine strength, charged alone into the enemy lines, and crushed the Hittite army single-handedly. For thousands of years, those carvings were the only surviving record of the battle. Because the story was etched into stone on temples across Egypt, historians and the public largely accepted it as historical fact. The Egyptian narrative held up until the early 20th century, when archaeologists began digging here, at the ruins of Hattusa in modern-day Turkey. This was the capital of the Hittite Empire, the exact people Ramses claimed to have annihilated. Deep within those ruins, excavators uncovered the Hittite state archives. Looking at this fragment of ancient cuneiform script, scholars could finally cross-examine the Egyptian story. The Hittite records proved definitively that Ramses was lying. The Battle of Kadesh took place in 1274 BCE, making it the oldest tactical battle recorded by humanity. But looking at the conflicting evidence from both sides, it also represents history's first massive military PR cover-up, born out of a near-fatal catastrophe. By 1274 BCE, Egypt and the Hittite Empire were the two dominant superpowers of the ancient world. Their empires collided in the Levant, specifically over the wealthy strategic trade routes running through Syria. Controlling Syria meant controlling the flow of wealth in the eastern Mediterranean. To secure this territory, Ramses marched a massive force northward toward the critical city of Kadesh. He divided his army into 4 distinct divisions, named Amun, Ra, Ta, and Set, which stretched out into a long, dispersed column as they advanced. As the Egyptian vanguard approached Kadesh, they intercepted 2 men claiming to be deserters from the Hittite ranks. These men told Ramses that the Hittite king was terrified of the approaching Egyptians and was hiding his army far away in the city of Aleppo. Believing the enemy was nowhere near, Ramses accelerated his march. He took his lead division, Amun, and pushed rapidly toward Kadesh, leaving the other 3 divisions miles behind him, completely unaware of the danger. The illusion shattered when Egyptian scouts captured 2 actual Hittite spies near the camp. Under brutal interrogation, the spies confessed a terrifying reality. The deserters had been decoys, and the entire Hittite army was heavily armed and waiting just outside the city. Ramses had fallen for a classic counterintelligence operation. Overconfident and relying on planted disinformation, the most powerful man in the ancient world had marched his vanguard blindly into a perfectly laid trap. The Hittite king, Muwatalli II, hadn't retreated to Aleppo at all. He had positioned his entire army out of sight, concealed perfectly behind the elevated geographical mound of Kadesh, right alongside the scattered Egyptian marching route. As the 2nd Egyptian Division, Ra, marched past the mound in a loose formation, the trap sprang. Thousands of heavy Hittite chariots burst from the tree line. They sliced straight through the unprepared Egyptian flanks, completely obliterating the Ra division. This carving captures the sheer density of the collision. With 5,000 to 6,000 vehicles locked in combat, the clash at Kadesh remains the largest chariot battle in human history. The momentum of the Hittite charge carried them northward, directly into Ramses' unfinished encampment. Heavy wooden wheels smashed through tents and defensive barricades, surrounding the pharaoh and sending the remaining Egyptian forces into a blind panic. Caught off guard and heavily outnumbered, Ramses fought desperately to survive the onslaught. The Egyptian line was on the verge of total collapse until a surprise force of allied reinforcements, known as the Naaran, arrived from the coast to stabilize the camp. After a brutal day of close-quarters combat, the fighting ground to a halt. The Hittites had failed to capture Ramses, and the Egyptians had failed to take Kadesh. The battle ended in an exhausting, bloody stalemate, with both armies severely battered. In the immediate aftermath, Ramses was forced to pack up his surviving forces and retreat south. He left empty-handed.
The Hittites not only successfully defended Kadesh, but they also advanced southward to capture additional Egyptian territory. Back in Egypt, Ramses faced a severe political dilemma. Admitting that his campaign had ended in a disastrous retreat could invite internal rebellion and signal weakness to rival nations. He needed a way to project absolute strength. So he launched an ancient public relations blitz. Ramses used the towering stone walls of temples like Karnak as a massive canvas, etching his fictional, mythic victory into monuments all across the empire to ensure his version of events became the official history. But the truth remained. For 15 years after Kadesh, neither empire could decisively destroy the other. The ongoing border conflicts proved to be an unsustainable drain on both kingdoms, exhausting their resources without yielding any new territory. This stalemate left both powers vulnerable to new threats, particularly the growing power of the Assyrian Empire in the east. Realizing that continued war with each other was essentially a suicide pact, Ramses II and the new Hittite king, Hattusili III, were forced to consider an alternative to conflict. Their solution was to draft the world's first recorded international peace treaty. Inscribed on this clay tablet, the agreement established mutual borders, non-aggression pacts, and a formal defensive alliance between the two former rivals. While leaders will always spin history to save face, the Battle of Kadesh proves that sometimes a disastrous, bloody blunder is exactly what is required to force humanity to invent peace.